I was blessed to learn this from Jack Canfield, the guy who invented chicken soup for the soul. And but before chicken soup, he was a self-esteem and peak performance trainer. And then since chicken soup, he's gone on to teach the success principles, how to get from where you are to where you want to be. But Jack always did in-depth work. And after a few years of attending the classes, I became sort of like Jack's apprentice at the back of the room. And from time to time, they would, whether it be 80 people in the room or 400 people in the room, they would say, okay, pick somebody in the room to represent your mother or this or that. And invariably, somebody would always pick me. But in this instance, the story I'm going to tell you now is Jack had a few people at the back of the room like me, and he looked at the gentleman and said, pick from the assistants who you want to come up. And the guy just went, Barry. And so I came up to the front of the room, and our instructions were, make sure if they ask you to do something, do it. And I'd been an apprentice for about 3 or 4 years now, and it was like, okay, I don't stray off the program, but at the same time, you're supposed to listen to your intuition. So here we are in front of a group of almost 400 people, and we're going through the process, and the gentleman is explaining his issue to Jack, and he's a Jewish boy who was probably late 20s, and his stuckness came from the fact that he never got a chance to play with his dad. Never. Dad was too busy. He was either too busy at work or too busy doing things at home that he felt the family needed more than being a dad to his son. His way of living was, I'm going to do this and supply my family with honor and money, but my son can play with his friends. He doesn't need to play with his father. And so the kid here he is 28 years old, and he's still missing his dad. And so he appointed me as his dad. And so Jack gave him his instructions, and he just kept telling, and he said, but I need to tell you this and this. And the more he talked to Jack about his sadness and everything like that, you could almost see the tears in his eyes. They almost came out of his heart. He was just so, and you could see the audience was like, and so I'm really paying close attention to what he had to say. And if you hear a bird in the background, that's our, we have a society finch who likes to sing. That's Pablo. So, hi Pablo. So Jack said, what is it you want? And he said, I just want my dad to notice me. And you could hear an in the audience. And he said, okay, Barry's your dad. Go over and say, hi Dad. Hi Dad. And he said, tell your dad what you want to do. And he said, Daddy, let's go play. And as he grabbed my hand, I was sitting on the edge of the stage. And as he grabbed my hand, I just got a feeling. And my initial instinct was to do what they said, and whatever they want, go do it. But instead, I grabbed his hands and I said, Joel, just a second, honey. No, Daddy, I want to go play. And at this point, I'm supposed to go play. And I said, sweetie, I promise you we're going to play in a minute. I just want to do one thing before we go. What's that, Dad? And I still had his hand, and I brought him close to me. And I gave him a hug. And he was a smaller man than me. And I actually picked him up, and I cradled him in my arms. And because I was sitting on the stage, I cradled him on my lap. And I just started holding him. And he just looked at me and just lost it. He just lost it. He put his head on my shoulder and just started sobbing. And then, I closed my eyes because what anybody else in the room thought was none of our business. They were learning how to do it too. But you could hear sobs throughout the audience, like, man, the guy got what he wanted. And then Jack told me later, he said, congratulations for listening to your gut on that one, because ultimately he would have came back to that. But and then when we finished the hug, we actually went and played a mock game of catch and things like that. But again, it's my job to listen to what it is you really need. And it's amazing that some of these things happen in front of a large audience. Many of the times it's just you and me, or just you and your counselor, or you and your friend, or whoever you're going to do this with. But just make sure you're telling the truth about what your needs are. I mean, all of us, we've stuffed down our needs for the longest time. And here's a little boy afraid to say to his dad, I need you to play with me, Dad. and instead of hearing, well, grow up and be a man, he says, oh yeah, son, someday. No, you go play with your friends. Daddy's got work to do. Well, one of the ways of becoming a man is, because those of us I consider myself a man now, even though I'm 58, but I still have a big little kid inside of me who wants to play and who wants to be loved. And again, in this instance with Joel, it was like, okay, let's make sure he gets what he needs. So you make sure you get what you're needing. Make sure you ask your doctor, your psychologist, your counselor, your psychiatrist. Make sure you ask for what you want, and make sure somehow they can deliver it. Make sure you get that from them, because if it's just that last little thing, it's almost like being in a fully loaded 747, fully fueled, the passenger on board, the luggage on board, the new fuel, and the food is there, but you can't take off. Why? Because you can't even leave the gate, because there's a tiny little piece of rubber holding back the wheels. So maybe this is that little piece of rubber from you backing away from the gate and soaring off into your dreams. So, and that is completing the incompletes. So just like Joel, ask for what you really want. You deserve it.